Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 1:30 workshop of the Board of County Commissioners. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first off, we have our discussion as it is to the Retail Food and Childcare Inspection Contract, Ms. Lock. And before we even start this conversation, I talked to our attorney this morning, and I just have to disclose that I got another DocuSign that apparently I didn't sign last week from a Judy Greek from,
That's the air quality.
yep.
And you
Well-
signed it.
Well, I did sign it, but in the meantime, I signed them both. So, just so that you two commissioners understand that prior to this conversation, I accidentally signed two of them, which one we're discussing now, so I just wanted to make sure that you guys are all aware of that, that I made an error.
And so the best way to handle this, I mean, this is going to come up tomorrow for a vote. If for some reason you guys decide to vote against it, then at that point, we'll have to get in touch with the folks at CDPHE and make sure that they understand that.
100% my
mistake.
error. I got a DocuSign saying, hey, we didn't receive
Is he
this.
gonna be real nice to us between today and tomorrow?
Yeah.
Is that what the deal is?
Call us old
He
and
better
wise.
Yeah, he's in some,
Just in full transparency, just wanting to make sure that everybody knows that.
Okay. Okay, yes, this contract encompasses the schools, the childcare, and the retail foods. And this is a core function of public health under our environmental health program. It consists of $15,000 for the year that starts July 1 to June 30 of next year. And there's nothing in here that's any different than what we've ever been expected to do. Brandy's here to answer any specific questions you might have. The $15,000 basically, because there is no, other than this reimbursement, there's no real reimbursement for the work we do for the schools and for the child care facilities. The retail foods, we charge fees to do that work. So the fees are what supports that work mostly, because this $15,000 easily gets eaten up by child care and schools. So that's kind of the gist of where that $15,000 is used for, even though they do have retail food under that. So and this is only for Montezuma County. Okay. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm just gonna sit back and leave it to my oh wise ones today.
It's confusing when the contracts come through back to back, and this time of year, I have another one awaiting. It wasn't on the agenda, so I didn't send. You'll be getting it from me later today. We'll have to have it on there for next week. So that's our workforce grant through OPHP department. So anyway, yeah, it's ongoing because everything starts new July 1.
Yeah.
So do you have anything you want to offer, Brandy?
You know, I think the biggest thing that I will add here is you know, just for the child care inspections, I think, Brandy, how many do you do just here in Montezuma County? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that or know that, you know.
Yeah, we don't do, I think, childcare inspections. I believe I have about 8 facilities. If they have diapering changes or feeding, so bottle feeding, then at that point it becomes a twice-a-year inspection. So I think I have 3 facilities that require twice-a-year inspection.
Okay. That's all I have.
I don't have anything.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, ladies. Short and sweet. I like it. All right. Next we have ballot print vendors, Miss Percell and
And company.
Associates.
So I brought our election department with me. You guys know Danielle and Kelly.
Yes. Good afternoon.
So basically, I've talked to a couple of you guys separately on this, and this is just basically for information. But our current ballot vendor is Runbeck, who notified us that they are no longer going to be doing medium and smaller counties. We currently have a 4-year contract with them, but because they told us that they weren't going to work with us anymore, we've been looking for other options. Sorry, I'm nervous.
Did you have Ian look at that contract?
The original contract, yes.
Uh-huh.
You guys had approved it in the past.
Okay.
But I don't really want to work with somebody that doesn't want to work with us.
Well, I mean, we've got a 4-year contract, and I understand that, but just to, unless there was something in that contract that gave him the opportunity to tell us to go fly a kite, I think
Yeah,
we
there was.
should be,
There wasn't anything like that. And they have told me that if we actually required it, they would work with us for the next 4 years. But I just don't know that our quality of service would be what it could be. So, can we enlarge that just a bit? I apologize, that's really.
So here's the thing with the contract. I mean, I understand the idea of not wanting to work with a vendor that doesn't want to work with us, but they signed up for 4 years.
Right.
And that contract specifies what they're supposed to provide. If they don't provide it, then they're breaching the contract. And so, there's a couple ways to go about this. I mean, obviously, I'm not the one that has to work with the vendor. And so, that's something that certainly needs to be considered here. But they're also contractually obligated to
Right.
perform as they said they were going to perform.
Exactly.
And so,
I kind of related, I thought about this after we talked. And like at Empire, we have a contract with our power provider. And if we leave unexpectedly, we've got to buy out the rest of our years.
Right.
And which is, astronomical amount of money, but I'm kind of relating to that. Maybe they should buy out the rest of their contract.
Right. I guess that's an option for us. If you look at what I sent you guys, though,
We're saving money by
by
changing vendors
changing,
anyway
right,
by
yeah. Yeah.
$1.17 to $1.44. That's a significant decrease
It is.
Yeah.
per ballot, yeah.
So I think what the issue was with Runback is they had a whole bunch of smaller counties with their financing that weren't, how do I want to put that? It would cost them more to actually take care of their elections than they were receiving back, is why they were looking somewhere else. So they've taken on all of the larger counties, and all of the smaller and medium counties are being blended into these other vendors, so. Yeah, who want us, yes, who want us and who want to work with us. So, a couple thoughts on, just wanted to let you know, what we did was we sent this out and it was based on 19 to 20,000 voters. Of course, we'll have additional costs, this is just the ballot vendor. This is just the ballots, it's not gonna include the UOCAVA ballots, or we'll have additional UOCAVA ballots and freight, test ballots, postages, and that kind of stuff added to our elections. They are compatible to the state ballot tracks program, all of them were. Most of them can be or are already compatible with our Agilis Duo machine. No matter who we go with, the look of our ballots is going to change. It didn't matter where we went, it's going to change a little bit. And that confuses voters. They're confused when what they receive is different. The other thing I wanted to tell you guys is there's new legislation that's coming up about the state statutory reimbursement. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. It was in a Senate bill that was passed. In the past, we were reimbursed 80 cents per voter for certain elections, and there was legislation that passed that now they're going to reimburse us 45% of the cost of the election. So which will be a significant difference as far as what our reimbursement will be. I wanted to let you know that our municipal registered voters, right now, we have a total of 8,216. We do the municipal elections, was one of the reasons we talked to each one of these vendors to include that. There was only one vendor that didn't K&H was the only one that said that they already have a tier for them. The other ones were talking to us about it would be, they'd have to either get a waiver that it wouldn't cost us their minimum amount, or, you know, things of that such, that they wouldn't just go with us on the municipal elections. So at that point, you're switching from 19 to 20,000 voters to 8,000 or 8,200 voters. Big difference. Excuse me. Currently, right now, there's 19,476 registered voters. The total cost of the 2022 election was $55,033.17. The state reimbursement for that was $15,192. This year, we're going to have, this year we'll just have the coordinated election. Next year, we'll have 3 different elections plus the municipals. And K&H has talked to us about working with us on all 4 of those elections. So this year, we will have a regular election, we'll have school board district elections, and then Cortez Fire has talked to us about being on our coordinated ballot. Okay, so now back to the K&H. Sorry, I just wanted to give you guys that stuff. These girls have, what we did was we had presentations from all of these people, but K&H actually gave us a formal presentation. We went through their exact process and how it worked and what they had to offer. You guys want to add your stuff?
I just made a few notes about what we liked about their presentation compared to.
Kelly, can you pull that mic,
Yes, I'm sorry.
turn that mic on and pull it?
Is that better? We liked that they were going to have 2 dedicated employees specifically for our county that work as liaisons between us and the K&H company. They also have a specialty program called MARS. I'm not sure what it stands for, but it tracks the ballot all through their warehouse and then by truck to Albuquerque, where it's then postmarked with a Colorado postmark, and should be about a turnaround of a day, right? Mm-hmm. Which is what we were currently having with Runbeck.
They work with a couple larger Colorado counties. They work with a couple larger Colorado counties, and then some of the counties that were dropped by Runbeck or are being dropped by Runbeck are choosing to switch to K&H as well. They just also see like a good benefit to using them as opposed to other. So K&H they know Colorado. They know what it is to work with us and work with the laws and regulations that we have already.
They already know our process.
Okay. Have you talked to any other counties that have used them and
We have.
got recommendations?
We have.
Okay.
Actually, in the packet that they sent to us, there's 4 or 5 letters of recommendation from these specific counties. And the counties that are currently tagging on to K&H have been talking to me as well as to their onboarding process and what happens and how much they appreciate what they're doing and like them. And there's a couple other things there.
We could do a contract with them or not do a contract with them. That was another plus, is that if you decide you want a contract, they would be willing to do one. If we decided that we wanted to go election to election, we could also do it that way. So if their cost goes up and we don't want to use them again, we could switch again at that point. Or if you want to lock in a price, then you have that option as a contract.
So since that conversation, he's talked to me again. I wanted to make sure that if I was going to present K&H to you, then if I had to have a contract, I would have it to present to you so that we could move it forward to Tuesday. And he's not requiring any type of a contract unless you request it.
So, when you say no contract, are we talking no multi-year contract? I mean, certainly we're gonna need some kind of a written agreement to be sure that we understand what they're doing for us and what
So
we're paying them.
Yeah, basically, he said we're not required to have a written agreement unless the county would like for us to have one.
I think it's,
And
sorry.
That's what I told him, yeah.
So I
I
think
told
where
him
you're
I thought
headed
we
in,
would
I
have
think,
one.
I think at least, even if it's just an annual contract, and it can be pretty basic, that we have at least an annual contract. It may not be a
To get it through
multi-year
the
contract.
year of the election
Yeah.
and then go on to
Yeah.
24.
And then you can evaluate it later, which
Yeah.
you know, you may look
That's-
at it and say, we need a multi-year contract.
Well,
2 or
that's what
3.
I told him, is I thought that you guys would request something in writing to know what
Because
exactly.
here's the deal, and I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we found so many things that we're dealing with that didn't have any kind of documentation or a contract with it, that now we're all like, what in the world is going on and what's happening? So at least an annual contract would be my
Preference?
preference. I mean, I don't know.
So basically what they sent to us originally was an information packet. So, and then he said we would work from that point.
What, I mean, in your off-year elections, like this coming year, would it be wiser to do a biannual, you know, every 2 years rather than just an annual contract? Because we're almost having an election every year anymore.
We do have an
We-
election every year,
we
and
do.
it fluctuates every other year as to the amount of elections that we have.
Yeah,
So, I'm sure whatever you guys want me to ask him for, he's willing to work with us on it.
What's your recommendation?
yeah, that's, I mean, this is your
So,
ballpark.
I personally would rather I would rather have an annual than a biannual, because, for example, last year, whenever all of the paper prices went crazy, we had to agree that instead of the $1.17 or the $1.44, because they couldn't get the paper, we had to agree to, and they'd already been contracted to do it, but we had to agree because they couldn't get the paper. So.
If an annual contract is not too much for you to deal with, I would like to leave it annually, and knowing that we're gonna have to update it every year. That's my opinion.
And the other option is we could do a biannual contract or a multi-year contract that doesn't have some kind of a provision for adjusting paper sizes or adjusting paper prices. I mean, that's the other way we could work that. I think the way the contract's written right now, and it's been a while since I've looked at it, but it talks about the cost of equipment and it's gonna be relative to what the paper costs, right? So if paper prices go down, I think that it's conceivable that that price could have gone down, but they went up.
Well, and another reason that I like the biannual or the annual is because we never know what size of ballot we're gonna have. We may have an 18-inch ballot, we may have an 8.5 by 11 ballot. So we don't know until we actually get ballot certification.
Right.
So, but anyways, so these were the 3 that we got information from. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions on any of them. Have you heard of any of them? Have the
I think I've heard of K&H, you know, when I got through some of that stuff.
K&H has been around a long time.
Yeah,
I think they said they are in the most states in the United States.
Haven't heard of them? Okay.
That's kinda your world.
yeah.
We don't try to cross into that
Well,
world.
if you remember, when I originally went with Runbeck, they were the only ones that were willing to work with
Yeah.
what we had. So this is quite the difference now, because there's like 20 different companies that we could have looked at.
Well, if Runbeck is getting rid of all of the smaller counties, it gave a lot more to the others, so I kinda understand that, but.
Okay, anything else? I can go back to them and ask them, would you prefer biannual, annual? What would you guys, I'm looking at you.
I would like to see it at least be annual.
And are you looking for an agreement or a contract?
Just an agreement, I think, just to provide service.
I'll leave that up to the attorney.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of one and the same ultimately.
Okay.
We just need to have the company set forth what they're gonna do and we need to indicate what we're gonna pay, so.
Okay. I can do that.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions about the other, anything else? I will give you more updates.
Okay,
with our
Okay.
budget.
great.
All right. Thank you all.
Looks like it's gonna save us a little bit of money.
Like 30 cents per ballot.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, Jessica, talking about landfill voucher program.
All right, guys. So this is what I'm proposing for this, and I wanted to kind of workshop it with you all today to see if it's something that you guys thought we should do, or if we should do more, or how we wanted to start using those funds that we've allocated to start cleaning up blight and getting the community cleaned up. So Travis and I, we've gone through back and forth with Mel and kind of figuring out what would be the best way to do this, whether that be dumpster rentals or just a cleanup day or whatever have you. And this is kind of what we've whittled it down to, is that we'll have 2 days where I'll sit in here, people can come, we'll verify that their address is in the unincorporated areas. We'll give them information on the landfill and what can and cannot be dumped. And then we will give them a voucher that they can utilize anytime, I think, by August 31st, 2023, throughout the summer. So then we will have that amount that is expended during the voucher program kept at the landfill, and then we'll be able to take those from the funds that we've allocated. And then that'll leave us with some that we will have that we can still use for land use cleanup or land use whatever we want to do with that, or we can do another voucher cleanup program, or it'll just kind of give us a little bit of a buffer to where we're not using all that money for vouchers, that we might be able to use it again at another time. So if you guys want to propose more days, if we want to do something completely different and go to the drawing board, I'm really open. Like I said, I've put a lot of thought into this, and I think that this is probably going to be our best form of action. So, thoughts? What do you guys think?
I've got a thought.
So do I.
In terms of looking at the land use code and some of our land use enforcement and kind of what I understood this money to be set aside for. I think when we first discussed the voucher program, we were talking about a specific property where there was just a massive amount of garbage and there wasn't funds to clean it up. And the thought was to help that property owner alleviate what's been identified as a pretty significant public nuisance. This obviously would be great in terms of getting a wide variety of people to maybe bring trash in, but I don't know that that's really what that money was set aside for, and that's ultimately going to be your decision. But I mean, as I look at some of these land use cases, what we're dealing with is, some of our most significant properties are the owners just simply don't have the resources to clean up those specific messes. And so, this might not really necessarily address what we need to address, which is a few really significant problem properties. That's just a thought as I look at this and think about land use enforcement, because as we see, we can bring these land use enforcement cases, we can get liens on property, and ultimately we can go in on the back end of it after we get a certain amount and conceivably take possession of the property and then clean it up at that point. Or we can do it on the front end, and really we're not looking to acquire property, we're looking to get these problem properties cleaned up.
Go ahead.
Well,
Well, I agree with Ian. I think that, what I was talking about was these problem properties that were, I can see how this would, you're gonna get a bunch of different people to join in the program, but I don't know that you're gonna get the properties we need to get taken care of with this. I don't know.
so I'm going to give you my 2 cents worth now, because you're correct. Ian, you're correct. That's what we set that money aside for, was basically for these problem properties. However, if we do, and it's only up to one load.
Yeah.
So we might also decrease the properties that may become potential problems before they become a problem. So I think it's working in conjunction with it. It's not exactly what it was intended to be, but if we stop it before it starts, we probably would be better off. So the only thing that I don't personally like in this language is Why can't we just put waste in its place with a landfill voucher?
That's,
Because the issues that we always have to answer, well, it's not free, and it's not free, somebody's paying for it. So we have to be really careful when we put this out into the public, because you know what the public is like. So be careful with the language. I would like to see that taken off.
that's
And
totally
just,
fine.
just a landfill voucher. And I think the rest of it, what we're trying to identify is appropriate. And maybe we only set aside,
May I comment real quick on,
Sure.
as far as trying to address those land use properties and those problem properties, the problem that I kept coming up with when we wanted to do that was how would we facilitate that assistance to those problem properties without it being a liability to the county, without it being grants to the property owners, and how would we distinguish what property was more significant than the other? I mean, just the capacity that it would take to kind of weigh out those was something that I just kept kind of getting tripped up on. And so I'm open to suggestions, and that's why I kind of, where we whittled this down to just the one trip and these designated days, so that we would have maybe some of those extra funds set aside to where if there was a property that would come up that would want to do something like this and was willing to work with us, because some of those problem properties haven't wanted to work with us, haven't wanted to really talk with us, that we would have those funds set aside that we could maybe come up with some other further program for them.
I think this starts the conversation, and say you only get 25% of it, we still have 75% set aside that we can actually go contact those problem properties, because we know who they are. That's why we set those funds there, because that's the real significant impact that we're trying to resolve. So
Well, and again, I mean, this is more of a preventative, like you were saying, it's more of a
This is-
preventative measure.
this is preventative, which is not in reality what we set the funds aside for, but
I'm open to suggestions. This is just what I wanted to get those funds spent, and I wanted to do something with them. So this is what I came up with, but I'm totally open to suggestions.
The other aspect that we looked at too was our capacity and monitoring, getting the equipment, because we was looking for dumpsters, people who would haul the dumpster, and one property could take up a quarter of the funds.
oh, yeah.
And not only that, is we're not able to sit and monitor a dumpster. So what if we were to do some sort of dumpster rental, people could put in hazardous materials on the bottom of the dumpster and we not know, and then we as a county could be liable when it goes to dump at the landfill, or it could cause harm to our landfill employees or whatever have you, because that wasn't being monitored.
Well, so I think that's potentially an issue anytime anybody takes trash to the
Yeah.
dump. And I don't think this is a unique situation. I'm not concerned from a liability perspective. If we put a dumpster out on somebody's place and they utilize that dumpster and then we go and pick it up, that's no more different from a liability perspective than people hauling trash into the landfill. So, that's not as big a concern for me as in terms of how to, get this program to problem properties. I mean, we've identified a couple properties that have significant messes, and I think it really becomes, hey, here's a dumpster, fill it up, or else
So what
we're going to court.
happens if they burn that dumpster? What happens if they have a fire in that dumpster and they destroy that dumpster? We, as a county, do not own any dumpsters, so we would have to rent a dumpster from a business, or we would have to purchase one. And when I did the pricing of it, because I called around on several different options on just buying out a dumpster that we could use for this program and but the transportation costs, the cost of the dumpster itself, and then the dumping of it, I mean, if they fill it up with concrete and a bunch of nonsense, then that could eat up one huge portion of this funding that we have. So, and then furthermore, if they destroy the dumpster, if we were to partner with a local vendor, which we called around to all the local trash haulers to see if they'd want to participate, and some of them said that they would. Others were like, we don't even want to mess with that.
They have that liability anyway, whether they're renting it out or whether we are. I mean, if somebody destroys their dumpster, I'm sure their insurance is covered.
But if we as a county rent that, then we would be responsible for that rental.
Well, I think it's a matter of figuring out
Yeah.
what the terms are and negotiating
Yeah.
those
Right.
terms.
Well, in the research that I did, that was what came up of it, so. And if that's what we want to do, is look at some sort of dumpster rental or some sort of rental to get the cleanups, open to that, and I can look at that, but
I'm curious, Don, you've been involved in some of the land use properties and some of the problematic land use stuff. What are your thoughts on this?
I guess you could look at it both ways. Like Jessica was saying, one property could eat up half the funds. I mean, that would be great to take care of that, but it just depends, I guess, if you want an overreaching countywide deal. But it's like we always say, those that got the trash aren't the ones that are gonna clean it up unless they're forced to.
And I certainly don't mean to sit up here and make it sound like this is a bad idea. This just wasn't what I understood that the commissioners delegated that money for. So, I mean, I'm certainly not, countywide cleanup sounds great. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It just, I'm not sure,
I think we can all agree to that, but at the end of the, like I've been saying, is I don't know how we can get that money to those that are needing it in an efficient way. And this would be able to spread it out and help more people and use it a little bit more efficiently. And it is preventative, which I think is something that might be a little bit harder to spin, but sometimes being preventative instead of reactive, that goes a long ways in the long run.
Well, I think that being preventative, and that's what I see, that's what this is doing, but I don't think you're gonna probably spend, I'm gonna say 25%, I don't know if that's real or not. But say it is, and then we then focus on the properties that Commissioner Copenhaver said, those people just don't have the resources. And I think that's where we have to be a little bit more outgoing. We have to do the outreach to them to say, look, we'll provide you one 40-yard dumpster, fill it up. And here's what you can and cannot put in it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them putting concrete in it, but you don't ever know. I mean, if they have a machine there, they possibly could.
I guess the thing that concerns me is the problem properties, a ton's not gonna make one bit of difference. You're not gonna be able to tell one bit of difference in that piece of property
That's
with
what
what this would do for them. I mean, it's not gonna do anything, to me. I mean, these people need some serious help. I mean, it's not.
Way more than that. And that's where we could use that extra amount that we have set aside that we can use for those bigger properties. And this wouldn't take off all of that. So maybe those bigger properties or people that approach us and say, hey, I'm gonna need way more than just 1 ton, then we can utilize some of that excess funds that are left over after August 31st to do some dumpster rentals for some of those properties. And maybe this will kind of just be a way to distill some of the properties down to maybe highlight those that are more of the problem. I don't know. Like I said, I've thought about this for months. I don't know what the answer is going to be.
Commissioner Copenhaver said, some of the properties that we're looking at, they
I
need
agree.
20, 30 tons. I mean,
Well,
they need
if you look at the
a
overall,
lot.
if we clean up all these properties, we're gonna need a new landfill.
Yeah, we're working on that too.
Yeah.
So here's a hard example. We've got the property on Road P. We've reached out to the landowners. The landowners have expressed that they're gonna do some work to clean it up, but we know that they don't have the economic resources to get that stuff through the landfill. Our choices at this point are, we can go to court and we can easily prove up that property violates the land use code, and we can start getting fines that accumulate and become a lien on that property. And then several years down the road, we can take possession of that property and clean it up. I mean, that's what we're gonna end up doing. Or we could take this funding right now, reach out to that property owner, say, hey, are you willing to work with us? Are you willing to fill these dumpsters? Here's the parameters for filling the dumpsters. and get it cleaned up right now. We're saving litigation costs as long as the property owners cooperate. We're getting one of what's going to be one of the top priority properties in the county cleaned up. I mean, so I think that's the case for using this money to alleviate, the big problems.
And that was the intent.
But then just to play the what if game, so we do that with one property. Like you just said, Commissioner Lindsay, there's tons of properties out there. So what happens when somebody else knocks on the door next year when we have another problem property? Are we going to have the money and we're going to give them dumpsters too?
I mean, I think that would be the idea.
So
That
this is going to be
becomes
this is going to be a continue. We're going to
Priority of
set that
of
amount
the
of money.
commissioners to set aside an amount every year to help clean up Montezuma County, because the better it is cleaned up, we're being good stewards of our county and of our land.
Well, if we want to
So-
just give it to one person, I mean that alleviates my
And I'm not-
workload
And I'm
too.
not saying
so-
you would give it to just one, but, and I'm not opposed to this. I'm not opposed to this and saying, like I said, 25% of the dollars are to this, because it's a preventive. It helps people get in the mindset that, hey, maybe I just wait a year and I get it cleaned up and I'm okay. But the bigger percentage of it was basically because we've got some big, 1 ton's not gonna go anywhere. It'll take 20, 30 tons for some of the places that we've seen.
We could certainly do a mix too.
And that's
I mean,
and that's
I
what
guess
this
that's where I'm
intent.
at, is
This is
I-
what it's intended.
I
Is
want-
that
I
it won't
want it
take
to
all the
be
money, but at least
more
get
of a
something
mix.
started.
Yeah.
I would just suggest if we're going to do a mix, let's see if we can estimate what it's going to take to alleviate, a problem property or two, so we know what's left over for sort of a general cleanup. I mean, you could certainly start with the problem properties, and then if there's money left over, then address, use it for a cleanup day or something like that.
Right. I know the city just finished last month their cleanup day. Do we do a cleanup day at the landfill? I don't remember.
Not to
Um,
my
City
knowledge.
did a week. They've
we-
got another one coming up in October.
Yeah, we've done a tire
Yeah.
collection at the landfill, but not a trash collection that I'm aware of.
Actually, we waive all the tipping fees. Well, actually, the commissioner's budget pays for the tipping fees that the city does too, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's kind of,
That I don't know.
because there are a lot of people from the county come and use those dumpsters that they set aside in the city, and I think because the landfill is an enterprise zone, we still have to take that money out of somebody's budget, and it comes out of the commissioner's budget when we do that. Because they can't waive fees. I think it's a starting place. Was it 100% of the intent that we had talked about? No.
I agree.
But if we're looking at the preventive side of it, it's a place to start. But I also think that, just say the P Road property, if those people are willing to work with us, I mean, we could get a 40-yard dumpster out there, and depending on what you put in there, you could put 2 or 3 there and get 20, 30 tons of material out of there. Because I think that was the real intent, is those people just didn't have the funding to even take the first step. And we really don't want to go through the litigation and end up with the property anyway. That's not our intent.
And I agree. I think that that's an important, not just much of a preventative measure as something like this would
Right.
be. But my hang up on that was just, is this going to be continued funding? Because if it's just that one property that we're going to give it to, I felt that we may step ourselves into some trouble if this isn't something that we can continue to do for other problem properties by just giving one property owner that opportunity and not others.
So
That's kind
how
of
do-
where I was coming from.
How do you qualify for one of these vouchers?
So you have to show your proof of residency and you have to show identification. Because it's only the unincorporated area of the
Right.
county.
But that's all you need to qualify. I can see the people, I mean, this is just gonna be a free cleanup day.
In essence, yes.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
It's preventative.
Which might get the ball rolling for them to continue on, or their neighbors to.
Or I could create a
Jump on.
conversation for those that may need that extra help, that, you know, they may come in for this and say, hey, I need this, I need more than a ton. What could you do to help me? You know, then we can maybe start looking at those properties or whatever have you. I don't know. This is why I brought it to a workshop. You guys make the big bucks. You make the decisions. I'm kind of at a loss with it. I don't know what would be the best answer, the most effective.
Commissioner?
I'm not opposed to having a cleanup day, because that's what this basically is.
Yeah.
But I would like to limit how much of that money gets spent on this, for this. So that we have, like you said, maybe 25% of it could go to this.
Yep.
And we keep the other 75 to actually figure out a way to get some roll-offs. We gotta be able to figure out a way to do that. I mean,
And I like that too. So if we can agree on
Yeah.
basically 25%, it's a preventative, and the other 75%, we're just gonna have to reach out to the ones that we know that are the worst, that don't have the resources. Because you're right, I mean, that's a lot of tons if one property eats up the whole value of it, but,
But there's, yeah.
And there's some out there that could.
well, there potentially is.
If you start hauling trailer houses, old mobile
I
homes,
know.
Mattresses, tires, all
you
of
need
that.
2 landfills.
At some point, there's gotta be some way to address all those, though. I don't care whether it's, I mean, just look down by Farmington at all the stuff they've got piled up down there in those places. I mean, there's just acres and acres of them. At some point, there has to be some way to address that issue.
And I'm definitely, that's something that with, you know, partnering with the city with our brownfields projects, looking at different resources that the state can have through CDPG and other organizations to help with the cleanups. I mean, that's something that I'm looking at regularly and trying to work on and try to find some support to do that.
So
But-
my direction would be, one is to take off the language
Okay,
and just leave a landfill voucher. We start with this and we use 25% of it to go for this cleanup day. And the other 75%, we're gonna have to do a little more work to reach out to the people that we know have the real big issues without the resources. That's just mine.
I don't have any issues with that. I just want
Yeah.
to make sure we get somewhere along the line that we can get some of these bigger messes cleaned up. Because it's, and most of those people they don't have the financial resources to do it. They don't. I know they don't. You know, it's just a fact of life. They do not have the resources to do this, and it's accumulated over.
But if
From
they're
their
willing to
parents.
put it in the roll-off, and yeah, it is gonna require a little bit of work on our side, because we've gotta call it, schedule it, and pick it up. Get that.
all right.
Commissioner?
And I think
I
we
agree.
can, and I think we can limit what I mean, we don't have to take concrete.
No.
We can limit what they can put in that roll-off also.
Yeah,
So that it's just
no
not.
concrete, no steel, no,
Hazardous materials, no electronics, no tires.
which.
We can
that's-
tell people that all day long.
Well,
Yeah, I
we
know.
understand that, trust me.
Yeah, okay. Well,
We
we can.
get dumpsters delivered to job sites all the time, and the next morning when we show up, there's all kinds of stuff in them. So,
Just like magic.
just like magic, just walked in there at night.
Trash ferry makes a visit every night.
I know all about that.
And I think it'll take us a while to get this whole program figured out, what we can do and what we can't do. It's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna take a few years to get everything figured out exactly how to do it. I mean, But we gotta start.
That,
And
a
I'm not
good
against
first step.
starting the way with this, okay? I'm not against that, because it'll help some people, and that's fine. That's what we should be doing here, trying to help people, but we need to clean some of this stuff up, so.
all right, guys. Anything else?
I'm
I don't
good.
think so.
All right.
All right.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have Mr. Higman here with our fleet or vehicle maintenance, and a discussion as it relates to our costs.
Shane, you got 3, so you'll have to tell me which,
What's that?
Is this
you have 3.
Not that one.
just this one?
I think,
Do you want the one that you sent emailed this morning? The 5-year outlook?
yeah, probably so. That'd be the best for now. So basically, our fleet costs are ballooning to the point of not being able to keep going eventually. It's, we've lost all of our government incentives, basically. All the car dealerships, all makes, models have done away with all government incentive programs, and a vehicle that cost us $30,000 2 years ago is now costing us $53,000. And that's just, it's either a price that the county's gonna have to absorb, which I don't think we can, or we're gonna have to figure out some way to do something different about our vehicle usage and replacement. I mean, this basically shows that the 15-year, 150,000 mile thing that we originally came up with is still gonna work. We're gonna be at a place where that's fairly usable. It's replacing 2 to 3 a year will keep us on that 15-year, 150,000 mile interval. Keep our vehicles under that. And then the biggest cost we're coming up against is the enterprise 5-year lease program. With the number of vehicles we'll have in there in 5 years, it's just going to be an astronomical amount of money. And I don't know. That's where the discussion comes in. I don't. With those vehicles going to $50-some thousand a piece, it's pushing our leases to $14,000, a little over $14,000 a year. And you see the numbers there. There's going to be some money coming back in, but that's all kind of ghost numbers at this point. I mean, we haven't seen it. We don't know at the end. We'll still owe, on most of those leases, we still owe $8,000 to $10,000 for the unit, and then whatever they sell above that comes back to us, but we haven't been able to sell any yet, so through enterprise, so we really don't know what number will come back to us. So, I don't know, it's just something we're gonna have to face. In doing a 5-year plan, it's something we're gonna have to face, is the number. As you can see, it's gonna be, in 4 to 5 years, it's gonna be close to $600,000 a year.
And is that at today's prices, or is,
That's today's prices.
That's-
So,
Today's prices, so
Yeah.
in
who knows with inflation?
4 years, because this first group was, all of the emergency vehicles we're placing at 100,000.
Yeah, they're
Correct.
at a
And then-
4-year turnover right now, close to 100,000. And this is all, there's nothing known for sure. You know, if there's one that doesn't get used very much, maybe we can buy it out at the end and use it for a couple more years before we turn it back into enterprise. So that this number could be, this is basically worst case scenario.
Right, but the rest of the fleet is the 15 years or 150,000 because they're not emergency vehicles.
Correct, yeah.
So when we first set this up, if you remember, the emergency vehicles, we went at 100,000.
Right.
And I think that's a good number. I don't think we want them going to 150,000.
Well, realistically, our emergency vehicles at 100,000 miles, they have probably close to 150,000 miles
Yeah.
because they idle basically all day, every day. Because
Yeah.
their computers, they have to keep all the electronics inside of them going. So they have a ton of idle time. So you just can't push those out. We have, I mean, some of the Tahoes have 150,000 miles, and can come down and see how good a shape they're in. And that's, just so to keep them in good vehicles, we have to rotate them. So, I don't know.
And I think that was the 4-year term, right? We figured 25,000 a year.
Yeah, and some
Which
of them
would-
get less. There's some that only, it just depends on the officer. I mean, not everybody's the same. Some people drive the roads a ton and put that many miles on them, and then some people only put 14,000 miles a
Right.
year on. And then the ones that only put 14,000 miles a year on, there's that $8,000 number at the end of the lease that we can give them the $8,000 at the end of the lease and keep that vehicle for 2 more years and then sell it.
When it hits
In
its
2 years,
100,000
yeah.
miles. But the goal was 100,000 miles to get them swapped out. And that was kind of the intention.
The biggest user is obviously the sheriff's department. So, they have, as you can see there, 20 patrol units, 6 detective, 4 command, and 4 detention, which the detention vehicles right now are not in the enterprise, so I don't know if they ever would be. But that only accounts for 4.
But the detention, and actually I see a detention officer behind you, they're not really emergency vehicles anyway, so couldn't they still go into 15-year, 150,000 miles?
Yeah, but they'll be well over the,
Over the 15-year?
yeah, they put on a lot of miles.
Okay. I don't think we want to keep anything over 150,000 miles.
No, and definitely the 15-year mark, they made it a new law last year that vehicle suppliers only have to go support their product for 7 years. So after 7 years, they can start dropping door handles, dash pieces, all the stuff to keep your vehicle working properly can be dropped in 7 years. So, I mean, realistically, that's the world we're going into now.
So is the 15-year too long? Should that change to 10 years?
I think that if you have that 15-year vehicle and it's still under 150,000 miles, you really shouldn't have those issues come up unless it's in a crash or it needs to be repaired. And then at that point, it's going to be so far beyond that you're not going to, they'll just replace it anyway. They'll just give you the money to pay it out. Go on. I mean, this is what we're up against. This is just doing the 5-year budget process plan. This is what we came up against. So it's something we're gonna have to fight in the next quite a few years here.
So what about the reduction of the fleet?
That's completely up to you guys, and we've been reducing, I mean, since we took over, and even when Clint was still there, he worked on reducing the fleet. We've been reducing the fleet drastically since, and there still might be more. That all depends on the numbers that come in per year. Every year I run the numbers of what vehicle gets what mileage, and then we have to make an educated decision from there on whether we add another pool vehicle. And there's been a lot of reduction, even this last year, 2 given and only 1 given back, and we're getting to a point of a skeleton. I mean, what everybody would need, except for there's going to have to be some. If we can't support that $500,000 number, the sheriff's department is going to have to. So we're going to have to figure out a way to cut that number down, and I don't know how we do that. So, but what the vehicle costs now is just, I don't know, we're looking at $600,000 a year.
Comments?
I don't have any.
I feel the same way as you.
I mean, it's,
Yeah,
It's just something you don't,
Well-
no one wants to look at, and it's just a cost that's, you have to do business, you have to have the vehicles, but.
but in 5 years, we're gonna be bumping up against that electric vehicle statute too, that's come along.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that'll be for law enforcement. I don't think that'll,
I don't know.
I don't think that'll, I don't, well,
We don't know.
I don't
You
know.
don't know.
I don't think it'll ever affect emergency vehicles.
I also doubt they'll ever be able to do it for emergency vehicles because,
But right now, if we're looking at this, we're a little over $600,000 a year.
Yeah.
yeah. And that, I mean, that's, you know, we got those enterprise numbers and they have numbers that are supposedly that money's supposed to come back to us. So that, like I say, this is worst case scenario, but there's no way of knowing without, we still have yet to get vehicles updated far enough to be able to start turning in 4-year-old vehicles.
Right.
So there's no way of knowing if that system is actually gonna work or not.
Correct. And
So
we still have to-
bottom line is
We
in,
still have to budget for
in
it.
4 years, this is
Yeah.
gonna have to be your budget to do vehicles. And if there's money that goes back in there to help, that's wonderful, but this is the worst. This is what you're gonna have to budget for vehicles.
And that's why the fleet got in so far behind, because they were only replacing 2 or
And,
3.
and
a
it doesn't
year.
really matter even at the size of the sheriff's fleet, even if you were to buy outright and not do enterprise, you're still out the same amount, the same number. It's,
Yeah.
that number's there whether,
Well, this is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Peter's out of money.
yeah, everybody's out of money. So, I mean, that's just, and I am trying to stay completely neutral ground on most of it. All I can do is give you the numbers and say this is the cost that's gonna be there in 4 years, and we'll have to make some decisions to, it's not this next coming year, you know, my budget for next year is still at that. It did go from 300,000, 2 years ago?
Yeah,
To
we
now
gave
it's
you
to
4.
4, and it's just gonna keep going up. I
Right.
mean, there's no,
And well, it goes up with the same percentage of the cost of vehicles anymore.
yeah. The only thing that doesn't go up is the money coming into the county. That's,
Well spoken.
the money, everything goes up.
Right.
You know, even living in the road department over there, watching the prices of oil and the prices of everything go up. We can do everything we can possibly do to save money, but there's gonna be some decisions that have to be made on cutting costs, and I don't know how to do it, but this is the numbers. And it's gonna probably be reducing the fleet. But that's,
Well,
all I can do is really facilitate the
we're kind of,
buying.
we have 2 choices, is increase the revenue or decrease what we're spending.
Yeah, decrease the
Right.
expenditures.
So, we can't get any more revenue.
And in talking to Enterprise, it's not really, they don't see those government incentives coming back.
No.
Yeah, I mean, probably never, but anytime soon, for sure. It's not gonna happen. We're basically buying vehicles for what the price of getting them off the lot is. I think the 2023 F-150s were 48,000 apiece. So, that's, I mean, if you just go down and purchase or order in an F-150, that's probably what
Well,
you're
the
gonna be paying
dealers were
for.
willing to give those rebates, you know, because they could get fleet deals
Yeah,
and disperse a lot of their unused vehicles, unsold vehicles. But now, they're selling them as fast as they come in on the truck.
and I think that's a lot of the reason that, a lot of the ways the enterprise was working too, is you could use that government incentive and the enterprise incentive and get the vehicle for $15,000 less than the general public.
Right.
And then you turn around and sell that in 4 years. That's where that number came from, to keep everything at a low cost. But that's kind of went away in the last 2 years, and now the costs are ballooning. Enterprise is working on a new model for updated costs and everything, but I can't. It's still gonna be a lot of money.
Yeah.
So when our fleet costs in 5 years are gonna double. That's- Hard decisions.
Thank
welcome. I'm gonna
mean-
go off of what you guys get paid the big bucks.
It's-
You
it's
make
the-
the decisions.
Yeah, right. Gotta have more revenue or gotta spend less. That's that simple. And that's what it's gonna come down to. If we can't get the revenue, we've gotta spend less.
And I really do think
Yeah.
after this year, our fleet's gonna be in pretty good shape. I mean, we're gonna be updated to a point of manageability to a certain extent. But, all those vehicles that were complete trouble vehicles are gonna be out, and will be updated. But there's still, every year, you wouldn't think in our fleet, just looking at it, there's enough that are 15 years old, but there's still, next year there'll be 2 or 3 more that are 15 years old and have 150,000 miles. It's just, it comes before you know it. So.
Comments?
Somebody's gonna have to walk. There's no way.
Bicycles for everybody.
Well, you know, we've done the pool vehicles. I think that's working out.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we're gonna have to look at a reduction somehow. I don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're welcome for the good news.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Shane.
I don't see anybody from the schools here, so we're gonna go right by the SRS funding discussion. Jennifer, we'll have a discussion as it's related to the IGA with Rico.
Oh, I think this is already on. So I sent you guys, well, I sent Travis a new calculation, and we went over it Friday together, so, oops. So I'm hoping this shows a little bit better numbers for per trip. This is for one trip a month, but the other trip is going to be medical, and Medicaid will pay medical for anyone that has it. So the $500 a month should cover what we do for this trip, and then whoever doesn't have medical for the other trips. But Medicaid, will reimburse us if they've got Medicaid, and I'm pretty sure most of the people that were up there have Medicaid that are going to transport. So that'll be paid for. That medical trip will be paid for. I also talked to Chauncey, and he said that the Rico board, is willing to look at it again. This is like I said, it's just a 3-month pilot. We're just going to do it for 3 months and see what happens and where it goes. And then if it works out, great. If the numbers need to be moved or changed, then we can do that too. And Chauncey said the board is willing to do that. So hopefully we got that part taken care of.
So then the 2 trips that we're proposing per month, you're saying one is gonna be just, well, probably not all of it, but most of it is gonna be reimbursed?
Medical, yeah. If they're
For
going
medical.
for, yeah, because one trip is going to be just medical appointments. So if that person has Medicaid, then we get reimbursed
And
for
what if
that.
they don't?
If they don't, then the $500 that they give us each month should cover the one trip for the grocery stuff, and whoever doesn't have medical for that trip. And like I said, if it doesn't, then we can also renegotiate that. But we won't know until we go a couple months and, see how it's going to work. So I don't know if that answered your questions or helped or.
Yeah, your numbers look better.
Yeah, we took the 73 cents a mile for the fuel
Yeah.
wear and tear and maintenance. So that made a difference there. So. Are there any other questions for that?
I don't have any questions.
What, so I still have questions.
Okay.
Because, so if we're gonna do the 2 trips per month and we're only gonna charge them $500, that's what they're willing to look at right now?
That's what it, yeah,
For
that's
the-
what we,
The pilot program
Right.
of 3 months, and then we reevaluate it at the end of the 3 months. And if it needs to be this $650 per month, are they willing to do that? Because for 3 months, it's not gonna hurt us,
right,
but
right.
like
Yeah.
we said the other day, we can't provide services to another county and not be reimbursed.
No, and I completely agree with that. And like I said, he did talk to the board, and they are willing to look at it after that, 3 months and adjust as needed. They really do want to get these people to Cortez to get this stuff done. I mean, it's been a long time coming. We've had calls from them, from people in Rico and wanting to come, and we're like, well, we don't service Rico.
So then, Ian, looking at this IGA, is this paid upfront and not monthly? Because if it's not a pay for it all upfront, I don't think we should
I'd have to look at it again. I don't remember the exact term.
Can you
Jennifer, do
tell
you
me, because I
remember?
didn't see that either. So this pilot program, this 3-month program, it should be a.
Yeah, I didn't look at that either.
Once it starts, we get all of the money up front and not this
I mean, I don't
billing
see
every
why
month,
not.
because it's just one more thing that we have to track. If we're gonna sign a contract or the IGA, pay it up front and we're done.
Okay.
I'll look at this, Commissioner, and we'll be sure that we get something with an upfront payment clause in front of you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Because what we're seeing on the backside is that it's taking a lot more administrative work, billing every month, tracking it. Just,
Right.
if we sign it, write the check and we're done.
I'm sure they would probably do that. I can get in contact with Ian if he wants to do that. We can get in contact with Chauncey or Shaq. I'm
Yeah,
sure
either way. I mean, I'm
either
happy to
one
make the
put that-
update. I guess the only thing would be,
If it's
is
on
Rico
tomorrow.
amenable, but I can't imagine they wouldn't be.
Yeah,
so.
no, I think they'd be
It is
okay.
pretty minimal. And there again, that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let these two guys
No, I
jump in
think,
too, because.
I'm all in favor of trying this and see where if we can make some adjustments down the road.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, I'll contact them and see what,
Yeah.
And I think that Shaq had said he was going to make an amendment for that, for the, if it does change, the amount looks like it's gonna be more, then we can adjust that.
Right.
And Chauncey was good with that too, and so was the board, so.
And
But if we need to put that in, that they pay it up front, I'm sure they'd be fine with that.
And it's
So.
better for those people to come here rather than go to the clinic in Telluride or over the hill to Montrose.
Or Dove Creek even,
Right.
they've got a clinic there, but it's not,
They have to come through here to go to that clinic, basically.
Right, yeah, so, yep. So, okay, I will get with Shaq and Chauncey and Ian and see what we need to do. with
So
that.
Jennifer, how do you want to do it? Do you want me to just update it and then distribute it to you guys, or do you need to get with them first? I don't know what the negotiating's been like, or who's kind of heading up on the other end.
The only person I think that we would need to run it through is Chauncey,
Okay,
just because he would have to probably, okay it through the board. I don't know if we'll be able to sign it
because they've
tomorrow.
already signed it?
They did, yeah, they've already signed it. They signed it before,
2 weeks ago.
yeah.
I'll get a copy with that language in it over to you this afternoon, and then you can run it through them, and then, maybe we can just get it signed a week from tomorrow.
Okay.
I mean, we can certainly get in front of you tomorrow if you want, but it would kind of be pointless to sign something without reaching out to them first.
Yeah, that's how I see, yeah.
Okay, I'll get that to you this afternoon.
Okay, perfect. So, is that anything else? Okay.
You're all right, Jerry?
I don't-
I
Yeah.
don't have anything.
No, I'm fine with that.
This is just 3 months,
Yeah.
Right.
so we can then, which
We
is
can
still
either-
not a
we can
lot of
end it, or,
data to
Right.
really see where it's gonna go, but.
Well, I mean,
It's
it'll
a
be.
start.
Yeah, it's a start, exactly. So, I mean, these people, there's only like 13 or 14 up there and they need to get to the doctor and they need to get to grocery shopping and, so, and that's what we do. And like I said, when we come in, there's a big chunk of time there that we can have that person do in-town rides. So we wouldn't really miss out on any of that too, so,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Okay.
Thank you,
Sounds like
Jennifer.
we need to call hoarders on those properties.
What's that?
Hoarders? It's a TV show that comes in and cleans up like properties because they're hoarders, the people are hoarders. You can call them, they'd clean them up.
Have at it. Get them, go get them.
I'm just saying.
All right. Next is our Lewis Cemetery District Board. I think we had two that submitted applications. Bill Gilliland and I think Melanie Filer was the other one. And these were the only two terms that were expiring. So,
That's a tough decision.
any conversation, gentlemen?
No, I don't have anything.
They're both currently, if you read their letters, they're both currently serving on the board right now.
I don't have any problem with them.
Okay. All right. That was the easy one.
Yeah.
All right, next we have JBBS contract. Ladies, come forward. Turn on the mics, pull them as close as possible,
Good to see you.
so the people out there viewing on
back?
TV.
I'm sitting up straight.
All right.
Standing and walking.
Good for
Thank
you.
you for asking.
And so the only thing that changes is just the signatories from the last one that I saw.
Yes, I
Okay.
had them take you off.
Okay,
And
perfect.
Jim Candelaria
Yep.
is on there, the sheriff's on there. And then on the MOU with Access, it's just the county, so it would be Jim signing the
Okay.
MOU with Access.
Okay.
So it's all correct and ready to go.
Okay.
Have you seen an uptick, Vicki, in mental health cases?
Oh, yes, Kent, we have. In fact, I think your jail is becoming a mental institute more so in some cases.
In one way or another?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, with the way the legislation's going and stuff like that, we're getting them first, having to try to work with the courts and everything to get them to a place. There's no beds available in Pueblo hardly. So it's hard to get people who have competency issues, to Pueblo. We have several cases in there right now.
Well, I know the ambulance is going to Colorado Springs, Denver, Johnstown, Centennial, taking those people, to places they can find a bed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. We work with Grand Junction,
Yeah.
Jim Cashman. She tries to work with us well, but like I said, trying to find a space available for them is a nightmare. So I can say that JBBS is a blessing
Yeah.
for us to have this.
What this contract does is it pays for the counselors that go into the detention center and assist these people with mental health issues. It also helps pay for the medications that, if they're prescribed to the mental health inmates, it pays for those as well. So
We also try to work with the people once they're released from the
Yeah.
facility to get them help on the outside.
Do-
So,
Do we have good access to counselors here? I mean, are we short?
you mean with the JBBS stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah. We have, I think there's 4 counselors that come into the facility. We have one that does substance abuse, one that has a master's degree that comes in and works with the higher issues that they have, and then 2 that do daily counseling with them. So they're constantly meeting with these people, which helps, even in the facility,
Right.
to maintain control and the order that we need in there.
So this specific contract basically is just for that,
yes,
counseling services
and medications,
and medication if they need it, if they get it prescribed.
yes.
What has it been in the past, and how has it I mean, how has it fluctuated? Is it kept up with the percentage of
In,
cases that we are seeing, or is it?
in the past, we were part of a catchment, and La Plata County were the ones that were taking care of the contract and making sure that all of the reports were in and that everything was taken care of. But it was La Plata, Archuleta, and ourselves that were part of the catchment. Everyone decided to split up this time around, and so Archuleta's on its own, La Plata's on its own, and we're on our own. We did get our funding cut because it's our first time, they say, doing this, even though it isn't, because we've been doing all the reporting and everything else. We're hoping to get the numbers up. So Access cut on their side some of the, and the counselors' fees that they pulled from somewhere else so that they continue with the same amount of service we had before. But they'll fund part of it with other grants and things like that that they have. And as far as keeping up with it, I think it has been, hasn't
No,
it,
it
Vicki?
has. It has helped a lot with the inmates, you know, even inside the facility to maintain, like I said, the control that we have, and outside too. I believe that once they catch them and they go to outside treatment, they find them the help. Sometimes we don't see the people that we usually come back in. Yeah, sometimes we do, but
Right.
at least they're known and can try to get the help that they need.
We had several parents when I worked in the dependency neglect realm that utilized these services, and you know, the outcomes were generally positive. I was really impressed with the services that they received in jail, and sometimes I know for the Department of Social Services it can be really difficult to get those folks the help they need when they're incarcerated, and so I think it's a really beneficial program.
Well, and unfortunately, we're seeing so many more mental health cases in the detention center, and it's really not where they need to be, but there aren't any facilities in the area or any places that they can go to get the help they need.
And that's a lot of the reason they're committing crimes and coming into the facility is because of their mental health needs. And they get substance abuse issues because of it, and that's where they end.
And are you guys still doing groups? It still covers groups as well,
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah, we do
Yep,
the group
yep.
therapy, substance abuse group therapies every day on a daily basis.
I think programs like this are so critical when you
yeah,
look at.
I don't disagree.
So is this coming as a DocuSign also, since I already?
No, it's a
made
wet
up
signature.
one?
It's, you actually sign it, and then I would have to have it back to get the sheriff to sign it, and then I would get it to JBBS, and they're hoping if you would sign it, we're able to tomorrow to get it back to them, because we expired the end of May, and it started the 1st of June. So they're holding it for us.
How come we're so late?
Because it took forever for the attorneys to look at all of the contracts and decide everything was okay. Not Ian.
Somebody had to
We
cut
got it
down
late, and
small
then we
force.
had to run it through our attorney, and we had to get it to Ian, and we had to send it back and the MOU from Access took quite a while to get. We didn't get that till it was later.
And I think
Because it's brand new, and I think once we work the bugs out this year, everything will go smoothly from now on.
there was
since
some
we're on.
confusion on the signature blocks and.
Yes, trying to figure out who signed what, and
I looked this thing over in fairly quick order, as quick as you can look over something this long, and
There's
it's
84
fine.
pages.
It's not real exciting reading,
no, it's not.
but it's a lot of boilerplate that we see in typical state contracts, and it looks fine.
Okay, well then it sounds like we'll move that for tomorrow, which it is there under unfinished business. So, any other questions?
I don't have any.
Thank you, ladies, for coming in.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Okay, the last one, Ian, we're gonna give it to you because it's the discussion on the litigation of 303 and Colorado Proposition HH.
Yep. So, I just wanted to get this in front of you guys because what's happening is there's a group in Colorado, it's called Advance Colorado, and they have initiated litigation naming the governor's office. And the litigation, in essence, challenges Senate Bill 23-303 and Proposition HH. Several counties have signed on to the litigation. as parties in the litigation. The counties don't have to bear any cost if they do decide to sign on to that litigation. Advance Colorado is the entity that's initiated it, and they'll cover all the legal fees. What's interesting about it is Advance Colorado is an organization that generally brings litigation against cities and counties for a variety of things, mostly CORA type actions and different, sorry, I'm trying to think of the word. So full disclosure, so CORA and transparency type stuff. And so if we do sign on to the litigation, part of that agreement would require us to waive any sort of right to claim a conflict if this organization were to ever bring litigation against us. The other thing that several counties have done is they've issued resolutions opposing these two legislative pieces, and in doing so, they have they're not joining up with the litigation, but they're just voicing opposition to it. Just to give you guys a brief overview, and I'm sure you've heard rumblings at the state level as well, I would imagine, with both of these legislations. But basically, Senate Bill 23303, it purports to provide tax relief, but it only gives a 0.5% reduction in the assessment rate for property taxes, and it takes away Tabor refunds. And so, in essence, what it's doing is it's looking like taxpayers are getting a break. They are getting a very small break, but then on the back end, they're not getting their refunds as they would. Proposition HH, that is a proposition that comes out of Senate Bill 23303. What it does is it asks whether property taxes should be reduced in exchange for voter approval of the state's retention and spending of excess state revenues. And so what it does is more money ends up in state coffers. And so the legal challenge claims that both of these pieces of legislation are deceptive and unconstitutional. In terms of how you guys want to move forward, I can draft up a resolution if the board is interested, either opposing this legislation, if that's what you want to do, or joining the litigation. From a legal perspective, there certainly are advantages to joining in legislation or joining in litigation. There's going to be advantages to staying out of this thing. I'm always a little bit uncomfortable when we as a county enter into this sort of an agreement with a third-party entity, because we lose some degree of control over the litigation. Yes, we're going to be parties in the litigation, but we don't necessarily get to dictate the day-to-day direction of the litigation, and I think that's always a little scary to me. I'm not especially comfortable with it, and ultimately in these sort of actions, having more counties involved, that can sway a court, but at the same time, ultimately courts are ruling by the law. And so, having 25 counties join this litigation, I'm not sure it necessarily helps or hurts the case, if that makes sense. The case is still what it is. I think what you guys need to decide is, as a board, first of all, what are your positions on this legislation? And second of all, to what degree do you oppose it? And how far do you want to go in that opposition? Do you want to be part of the court case? Do you want to have a resolution opposing it, or do you want to take no position at all at this point? And I think those are the options on the table. If you decide to take no position at all at this point, you can always take a position later. I think in terms of the litigation, if you guys want to join the litigation, that ship's going to be sailing. And so if that's something you want to do, I would suggest that we get on that train pretty quick. I can reach out to Advance Colorado and get those agreements and run them by you guys, and we can move from there. What I can tell you is last check I had, I think approximately 12, it's up to 12 counties that have joined the litigation. And then several others have passed resolutions opposing the litigation. It's a mix in terms of the counties that are in opposition. It's a mix between ones who have actually joined the litigation and ones who have taken the stance that they're gonna issue a resolution opposing. And then certainly there's several counties who have taken no position on this.
Travis, what was the conversation at CCI last week on this, as far as the counties? What basically transpired with that conversation?
So there was a lot of conversation about this, and both of these are just really bad on face value, just to be quite honest. Some were talking about joining it, some were just talking about the resolutions. There was a comment seeking to see if CCI would jump on the bandwagon as an organization. I don't know, just my personal opinion, I'm no lawyer, but anytime you jump on a lawsuit, in my opinion, it's not good.
Well, we're not gonna guide it then. It would be all up to Advanced Colorado. I'm kind of
Exactly.
leaning more, I wouldn't be opposed to a resolution stating our comment. The resolution is basically our position, but we're not joining the lawsuit, so.
I think from a legal perspective, that can be a very smart position to take. Just because when you take the ball out of your court, when you join onto a lawsuit and you give a third party certain rights to represent you and to guide the lawsuit, certainly there are ways to, if you're a party, you get to steer your own ship to a point. But at the same time, the agreement that the Advanced Colorado is disseminating, they're the ones that are going to be heading this up. And once you get on board, if it starts going a direction you don't want to go, then you're going to be dedicating resources to litigating that lawsuit from your own perspective. If that makes sense.
I would be more willing to look at a resolution than to join on to the lawsuit myself, but maybe it's.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I will draw up a resolution. I'll get it in front of you guys. And then if you're comfortable with that resolution, if I'm understanding it right, and the other thing I can do is I can actually get the hard agreement with Advanced Colorado for you guys to look at to see whether you want to move forward, and you can look at those two documents and both those options. We're still in the early stages of this. Counties are still, as of last week, counties were still making decisions on this stuff, and resolutions were still circulating. And so I'll get those documents in front of you, and then you can make a decision.
Okay.
No.
Any other questions for you?
No.
Okay.
I don't have any.
Well then, that is all we have on our workshop agenda, and this meeting is adjourned, 3:00. Thank you all.